Who am I when I operate from the healthy feminine? This is the question that shows up at my doorstep whenever I ponder how I want to show up in the world, how I want to feel in my own body, and the quality of my relationships. Embodying what I consider the healthy feminine takes real work, awareness of my thoughts and patterns, honesty about where I might still be caught in something toxic, integrating new behaviors to replace old ones, and walking the talk more in the actual moments of my life. So let's get into it. What is the healthy feminine and why does it matter in your life? Welcome back to Mystical Sisterhood. Here we are at, I might even say crossing the threshold of midsummer. This is your host, Maureen Spielman, and I am back for episode 188. And I had been pondering the healthy feminine and what that meant just, in my world, and just some ways in which we can transform patterns of where we may be operating from more unhealthy motives inside of ourselves, ingrained patterns that simply don't work anymore, and just taking a look at the ways that we can more closely look at these areas in our life and begin to implement small ways to start to change I want to say direction. I mean, in my mind, I'm seeing it as sort of like, as the world turns, we're always in a kind of process of transformation. But I really want to bring this forward because I think that in some respect, we all deal with this, the unhealthy kind of ways we see ourselves, the way we judge others, keep ourselves isolated. And I'm looking at ways today that we can shift from this old paradigm of relating to ourselves in a very less than pristine way, and individually and collectively be shifting into new paradigms of, complete and utter self-respect, self-reverence, self-honoring, and putting the actual practices in our life that are showing to ourselves that is what is most important to us. If we do not take the time and look at the ways we are sabotaging this relationship to self, then, that rules the show. And so let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Not waiting for the day that it might come for you or happen, but really starting to take a look and make those smaller inspired actions in each and every day. So what is this healthy feminine I'm speaking of? I was thinking as a corollary, we hear the divine feminine a lot. But today I'm just going to, keep it simple with the healthy feminine, the one that feels good, the one that feels juicy. And, I know I have male listeners out there too. And it is said, and I believe that we do all have the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine in us. We also see from our conditioning the toxic masculine and the toxic feminine. So this conversation is really for all of us, and just see where it lands for you and what's in it for you and what might be here for you to just hold in a new, gentle and reverent way in order to come to yourself with more grace and really passion and compassion. When I speak of this healthy feminine, it's like the well feminine. And when I say that, I know when I say that, does it bring a smile to your face? Can you imagine it? How this version of you feels, how it is when she enters the room. And is it in contrast to earlier versions in your life? And if it is, or if there are voices right now or ways that you are being with yourself or others, that it's not wrong. It's not inadequate. It's not incorrect. It just leads us to the way that becomes, I think, more of our soul's path. We weren't meant to be in judgment. We weren't meant to be in criticism. We learn these things. And so it's coming back to really the truth of who we are. And, those internalized voices were byproducts of our environments. And so here we are at this threshold of your what's next and what's to come. And what I do know is that we are all powerful and mighty creators. And You have a large say and part in that inner transformation. So I chose today to kind of look at 5 ways in which we can cultivate that healthy feminine in us. And so the first one was around taking a look and becoming aware of the internalized voices of judgment and criticism about self. And where are you still speaking harshly to yourself? For many in our human bodies, it is a harshness around the body and our size. And it could be around the aging process and how our faces change. The fact that you might not be where you want to be in your life right now, and shaming yourself for that, feeling that you haven't made it yet. And I want to watch out. This is said many places, but where we use the word should in our life. I should be here by now. I should look like this. I should be acting like this in relationship with my child. And, it's just a tricky territory to be in the shoulds, because it sort of implies that there's one right way to be and there's that one right path to be on. But if we can agree to take that out, I think it takes the pressure off of us. And knowing that in anything that I'm sharing today, or really at any time, you are in your own process, you are at your own pace. And the more that we can really see that in ourselves without the shame and the guilt and the wrongdoing, which are really born of comparison, the healthier and more spacious, I want to say more space we're creating in the development of what we're wishing and intending to create. So here's the practice. It's going to be brief, what I share today, but when you catch yourself in any voices of self-criticism, and I know for a lot of younger people, and I can't say that our generation, I'm in my mid 50s, is exempt from it either, but I know that there's a lot of spiral that can happen. So before or at the beginning, when if you're kind of going in a spiral of that self judgment, the self doubt, the self criticism, it's like the sooner you can catch yourself in it, the sooner you can start to cultivate a voice that is more supportive to you. And it's the recognition. So when we catch ourselves being, with self hardship, put that pause in, take a moment and say to yourself, oh, I see myself, I'm just berating myself for having not exercised enough this week or this month, or, I should be keeping up with my book club, or I didn't call my mom enough, whatever it is. And there's all sorts of ways. I mean, for you listening, it's like, oh, what are the way your voices come in? And I think the question for me is like, how do I replace that judgment with compassion? And how can I transform my inner dialogue? And those are very powerful questions. Even to recognize that there's a question to be asked, it's a mighty question. And so, I think it's taking a look with those basic ones and asking, or saying, I should say, I have compassion for myself in this moment. Am I willing to have compassion for myself in this moment? I want to put, like, at the end of each of these is that mystical component, because here at Mystical Sisterhood, I'm all about that bridge of the human consciousness with our mystical spiritual consciousness. And it is all in the one. But sometimes, well, let's just say in our conditioning, it was like, even if you had a religion, it was your human self. You were operating from all the patterns, all the roles, all the repetitions of how you learned to be, how you had to be. I want to say, on a mystical sense, like, why would this be important? Like, what am I doing that is pulling in more universal themes? And this is really about the relationship to yourself, with yourself as sacred relationship. And many traditions teach that this divine resides in you. So when you judge yourself in any of these ways, you're not just being unkind to yourself, you're disowning the part of you that is really whole and holy. So self-compassion is a spiritual practice. It's not just a one in the mind and a mental one. It's recognizing the divine in you in the mirror. All right, the second one I was going to go to in terms of really operating from the healthy feminine, I named it holding the ways we judge women in our lives. And I say that from the sisterhood point of view, but this can be for anybody. It connects us to this theme of unity consciousness. Okay. So often in mystical sisterhood, I'm like, oh, I'm all like, it's like, peace out, namaste. I'm all about unity consciousness. But what does this mean? And it really means that we are in harmony with our brothers and our sisters and our fellow beings here. And that this ties into the point number one is that harmony begins with the inner harmony. And then when we're practicing something like we're catching ourselves, we're cultivating the more harmonious inner dialogue. That's going to help us relate to others. So I notice these days that if I say mystical sisterhood, and believe me, I think what we create through our work is often what we're healing within ourselves. And so I really take everything I can in my life and I use it, if I find myself in that judgment and like, ooh, Maureen, all judgment being self-judgment. Where might I be judging myself? And again, it brings it back to me. And that one, when I first learned it, like the judgment I make of another could possibly be a reflection of my relationship to self. It was like, that can't be true. Like, how could that be true? But I will say, in the softening to yourself of yourself, like in the first point I was making today, you will find that you begin to soften in the other parts of your life. And it makes looking at our judgments, well, first of all, less threatening. I'm not a threat to myself, right? So if I say, oh, Maureen, like, let's look in the mirror, that's okay. That's for my expansion. It's not because I've done something wrong. It's because I want to learn and expand and grow. So in my life, you may say, this is crazy. We're human. I really want to strive to be as judgment free as I can. Now, it's a daily practice. It really is, because I can't speak for men, but for women, we were raised often on this diet of complaining. And if I didn't really receive that from my home environment, then I definitely did from growing up with women. And it is a toxic feature that has taken up too much time and space in our culture and is begging to be dismantled. I mean, when we're talking about let's replace old paradigms with new, it's like, yeah, okay, so I want to treat my brothers and my sisters with reverence and what's being triggered in me when I judge. So I love that one. So this idea that the healthy feminine turns inward first and holds herself in a field of unconditional love, safety, and compassion. And from there, beginning to understand more deeply why that judgment is showing up. And so I'm kind of naming that mystical element of this alongside the human one right here. And it's unity consciousness. And the teaching of unity consciousness is all about teaching that the other is not separate from you, a reflection, an extension, and sometimes even a teacher wearing a different face. So just bringing in that spiritual concept of unity, of harmony, of oneness, of not separate. We were so ingrained that we were separate from others, yet we're learning, like, how do we come together? How do we make this world what we wish to see? And it starts with these very human qualities of intending to be this healthy version of ourselves. So a very unhealthy third pattern that I know exists out there is self-abandonment through, I just named it, putting others first. And let's just look at the ways that you and I may have self-abandoned. And I love this idea of self-abandonment. I think when I first heard it, I probably didn't really understand it, but I was like, ooh, I like that. And it's this idea that somehow you're abandoning your own needs in forsaking, or in service, I should say, of another. So ways in which we abandon, or I still abandon, is not keeping a boundary, still going to what does someone else need before I meet my own needs, ignoring my own needs and desires. People pleasing. Yeah, these are the ones that are coming to mind for me. And overdoing, or people pleasing, or these ways like that we learn to run off of, right? They become our fuel, but it's actually sort of a toxic fuel, right? So what we want to take a look at is, where are we putting our own needs in the backseat in the trunk and letting everyone else's drive the boat. I think at all ages, because I believe these younger generations are super savvy and they're taking a look and like, wow, how have I forsaken myself at 23? How can I stand by my own side? And so just again, the awareness that you might be operating off a role or a pattern or a mask or something that's truly not yourself. It's really understandable to begin with, but interrupting it and instead of going to what do they need, deeply consider what do I need. And don't worry, you're not abandoning the other person completely. You're just changing the dynamics. You're changing the energy. You're more concerned and know at a very deep level that you need to be resourced. You know, it's often said in the most layman's term that you can't give from an empty cup. And that's so true. And what does that mean? It means that how will I take time for myself? How will I even tap into my needs? How do I know what they are? Do I want to explore this? This is what coaching is all about. So there's these beautiful questions to ask, like, what do I need today? What would feel so good to give myself or gift myself? Is it space? Is it time for my own creativity? Is it maybe even something like a massage or a workout or a conversation with a trusted friend? And the call is here to settle into your own life one step at a time. And I really believe in the art of the small steps. And gosh, aren't these all just such compassionate things to do for yourself? This is about this third one of not abandoning yourself when we say like, well, what's the spiritual overlay? What's the mystical overlay? This is really about soul alignment and sovereignty, I believe. And it's about the I am, the eternal question that we ask ourselves, the authentic self beneath all of the doing. And so, coming home to what do I need is coming home to your soul's voice. It's listening deeply into yourself. And some call it your inner knowing, your higher self, or your true nature. You might have another name for it, but I love this one of the healthy feminine is based in not abandoning the self. This next one is leaning into support in spaces that feel safe. And I believe that earlier generations were really built, and maybe I'm broadcasting from America, and you can think about your own country of origin if you are from around the world. But America was very much the idea every man for himself, and you could build whatever you wanted to build, and you did it by yourself. And so generations later, we find that this is actually a pretty yes, it's mighty, but it's also toxic. And so we're at this age where we're moving into not having to brave the wilderness alone. And I really believe that the podcast Mystical Sisterhood, one of the things that I've done here is aside from cultivating my own practice of coaching and running groups and calling groups together, which is all very powerful and here for you to access if you want to reach out. But I've also become this great library of resources. And I feel like who I attract into my sphere and who I've trained with are, I am telling you, top notch people. And so if you ever want to reach out and send me an email at hello@maureenspielman.com or DM me on Instagram, I'm at Maureen Spielman. I really am very into this idea of directing people where they might find wonderful support. And this is in no way of anything other than the purity of my heart. I mean, I believe that we have such copious, abundant resources coming forward. And when you can have a trusted source like myself to be like, Maureen, have you vetted this out before? Have you, I've gone through cancer. I've lost parents. I've been through things with my children. I've cultivated new. I've been through many versions of my own dark night of the soul. And perhaps that's a driver too. But aside from that, it's like what is coming forth right now, it just are just such beautiful, let me see, directions to turn when you find yourself challenged or struggled or in need, or if you're in a great place and want that partner to co-create life with, so you can live this life of your dreams, and not by default, but it's really like, how do I want to live and how do I want to design that? So it doesn't even mean that you need to be in the darkest places, not at all. But I think that's really cool. So, just ask yourself the questions, because I like a question for each of these is like, where do I feel safe? What am I looking for? Is it emotional safety I'm looking for? I'll go back to that. In what spaces am I wanting to feel witnessed and seen and heard? Is it an individual relationship? Is it a group? Is it a therapist? Is it a coach? There's so many different avenues you can go. So just know that you are not alone, and I am full of resources. And if I don't have it for you, I will find it for you or do my darndest to try. And I think that how this relates to the bigger spiritual or mystical picture is that the notion that our awakening isn't a solo path, which is so beautiful. Many traditions hold that we are here to mirror and midwife each other's growth. The isolation of modern life runs counter to something ancient. The way that we, are on our computers all day, we're on technology. It's like we need connection. Connection is a cornerstone of what I'm up to here too. So that connection and the way that we're woven together, they become really sacred containers. So the one I'm going to circle with at the end here is a very healthy feminine way, a healthy way to be in life. And that is trusting yourself as your own wisdom keeper. I absolutely love it. And know that the healthy feminine surrounds himself with wise ones. Yes, of course, and like this is happening. Like there's more interweavings and there's more wise ones coming forward. And we're here to guide and mentor one another in any way we can. And I think, in many ways be of service. But you at the heart of it are your most trusted advisor. I love that. And I've worked, with many amazing souls, many amazing teachers in my lifetime, and they have helped guide me to my truth. And that's really become a non-negotiable in my life because it keeps me on that path of what I think like finding what I'm here to do, seeing myself more purely. So that's a non-negotiable for me. But I think that those are gifts for us, and they lead us back to our true, authentic voice. And the place that I'm most going to turn, first and foremost, and it goes to my earlier point of, what do I need here, is I'm going to be my most trusted advisor. And if I have a board of directors, she's going to be at the front of the room. So I don't know. I think that that's a great one. And I think trusting your own wisdom you kind of points to the mystical teaching that the guru or the teacher or the guide is ultimately, it is said, the finger pointing at the moon, not the moon itself. So yourself. Every tradition that talks about awakening eventually says some version of the teacher's job is to lead you back to yourself. Your own inner wisdom is often described as the divine spark, the still small voice, or direct knowing. That part of you doesn't need anyone else's permission to be in your truth. So I feel like each of these points could probably be their own podcast. And they're really this coming back to these healthy, healthy, healthy versions. And when we are in that healthy version, we are restored. Think about how each of these 5 things pulls the energy that has been fragmented and dispersed for you and pulls it back to self. So then you become your own, generator of energy. And then it's that choice point of like, how am I going to use this? How am I going to use this to bring my brilliance out into the world? And I don't think that this is just a checklist for becoming a healthier version of yourself. It's a roadmap back to something ancient and a remembrance that you have. When you soften the judgment you hold towards yourself, you're recognizing the sacred that lives in you. When you dissolve the judgment you hold towards others, you're touching unity consciousness, the truth that we were never really separate to begin with. When you stop abandoning yourself for others, you're coming home to your own soul's voice, the one beneath all the doing. When you lean into safe, supportive spaces, you're remembering that we were never meant to awaken alone, that consciousness expands through connection and witnessing. And when you finally trust your own wisdom above all else, you're arriving at the truth every mystical tradition eventually points to, that the teacher, the guide, the resource, they are all leading you back to yourself. So this healthy feminine really isn't a destination that I'm here and that's way out there. It's a remembering that we're all doing, of wholeness, of sovereignty, of unity, of connection, and most of all, of your inner knowing. My hope is that wherever you are on this path, you leave this episode a little more awake to who you already are. You remember the wholeness. So if there's any part of you that is stirred with this episode, with these points I've made, this is the work that I do. And feel free to reach out for a consultation, a discussion about what you're seeking to create in your life, what you are desiring to dissolve, what patterns are ready to fall away. I love working one-on-one in this capacity. So email me at hello@maureenspielman.com or DM me on Instagram, and I'd be more than happy to speak with you. I'm excited that we all are where we are in our lives at whatever point of this awakening we are on. And no doubt about it in my mind, it's a collective experience, and we are creating a new earth we wish to experience. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mystical Sisterhood. To learn more about my one-on-one coaching programs or join the Mystical Sisterhood membership, visit maureenspielman.com or mysticalsisterhood.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next episode.